Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. We're just over the halfway mark for December, and 2023 is going to be one of the most exciting years for Star Wars content. Now in all fairness, we said the same thing prior to 2022, but these shows coming up are mostly Filoni and Jon Favreau, so we know the caliber and the quality that we're dealing with. And if Mando Season 3, The Bad Batch Season 2, Skeleton Crew and Star Wars Vision Season 2 wasn't enough, arguably the biggest show of next year is going to be Star Wars Ahsoka. Now it's been a hot minute since the last time we spoke about the show, but today, Making Star Wars have unveiled some truly incredible revelations. We're talking Hayden Christensen, Darth Vader, Ahsoka flashbacks, you heard me, flashbacks, Order 66 and more, so no more jibber jabber guys, let's dive straight into this. The Ahsoka series has now wrapped filming, but during the production for the show, apparently there was a code for a character that Making Star Wars cannot reveal at this moment, but through this code, he was able to figure out and confirm Ahsoka Tano had different code names for different eras of her story, using two different actors for those moments, so it's not just going to be Rosario Dawson, they've hired a mysterious actress who's going to play Ahsoka in flashbacks. They say this was their first hunch they would see Ahsoka in different eras, not just the present timeline in The Mandalorian, but all the way back during the Clone Wars as well. And this story now takes a sharp turn. There is a younger actor playing Ahsoka Tano, so it's not just going to be Rosario. And in case you're wondering about Ashley Eckstein, and if she's involved, they say they simply don't know. They can't confirm or deny it. But before we get ahead of ourselves, these flashbacks are just glimpses, small sequences, and Rosario's version of the character, the present day timeline in The Mandalorian, is going to be the majority of the show, so flashbacks are going to be scarce, but when they do appear, the fandom is going to erupt. Making Star Wars also mentions we're going to see Ahsoka in different eras as well, via the world between worlds. In one scene, we're going to see Ahsoka in her late teens, and another time in her white robes, as we see at the end of Star Wars Rebels, when she and Sabine are looking for Ezra. They also confirm we're going to see the fight of Twilight of the Apprentice, Ahsoka versus Darth Vader, but it's not just going to be this scene, we're going to see another fight too, an alternative reality where Vader never lost his limbs and he's wearing the same costume he wore in Mustafar in Revenge of the Sith. And for this scene, Hayden Christensen required some additional training for that sequence because his face is going to be fully on screen. And that sequence is going to be Ahsoka if she'd returned to the Jedi Order, where she's the one facing Vader on Mustafar, not Obi-Wan, so that's going to be really interesting. In the world between worlds, Ahsoka's also going to have some more visions, some of Thrawn, some of Ezra, learning about the path that Anakin took when he was groomed by Palpatine, and those visions are going to be Ahsoka working through her regrets. I really can't wait, especially hearing about Anakin on Mustafar, super exciting stuff. By the sounds of things, Anakin is going to play a huge part in this show, whether in flashbacks, as a Force ghost, or in alternate realities in the world between worlds. Dave Filoni is making this about the relationship between the Chosen One and his former Padawan, how his path affected Ahsoka in a very deep way, and to some extent, she is still affected by it, and the fact that Anakin turned to the dark side, but I'm sure she found out through Luke that in the end, Anakin was redeemed, and I do think Luke should appear as well. Dave Filoni promised he'd show us how and when the two of them met, seeing Ahsoka at various points in her journey, but this time in live action, flashbacks, and maybe even Order 66, and an alternate version of the Battle of the Heroes, not with Anakin and Obi-Wan, but with Anakin and Ahsoka, if Ahsoka never left the Jedi Order. I really believe that Ahsoka is going to be the biggest treat of 2023. Dave Filoni is following in the footsteps of George Lucas, and I know the world between worlds isn't always the most popular thing, various points in the timeline, alternate realities, but I think it's fascinating, and to this extent, I can kind of see the link between Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew, both shows incorporating more of a fantasy element, and I should say in the Making Star Wars livestream from last night, there were more details added, notably that Morgan Elsbeth from Chapter 13 of The Mandalorian Season 2 plays a big role in the Ahsoka show. We're meant to be wondering if she lived or not, because we never got a conclusive answer, but her whereabouts and what she's up to is very important to the Thrawn subplot. And given the information that Skeleton Crew includes Night Sisters, I'm starting to believe the fan theory that Morgan Elsbeth is one of them, using a form of magic not from Dathomir, but what's going to be known as the New Beyond. Super exciting stuff, guys. Share your thoughts on this news in the comments down below. And now, my dear friends, onto The Mandalorian, but also some overlaps with the book of Boba Fett, or rather, future Boba Fett stories, whether that's in a second season of Boba Fett, in The Mandalorian's third season, in Ahsoka, wherever Boba Fett might show up, this video is relevant. So let's start by talking about The Mandalorian Chapter 14, The Tragedy. In my opinion, this is by far one of the best episodes of the show so far, and I rewatched it in preparation for making this video, and it just reminded me of how much I miss Mando. For one thing, we got to see Tython from the Old Republic again. Grogu reached out in the Force trying to connect to a Jedi. We also saw the reintroduction of Boba Fett properly. Of course, at the end of Chapter 12, The Marshal, we did see him in his Tusken attire. And we also see Slave One soaring across the Tython sky. There's an Empire Strikes Back reference when Boba Fett sees that Gideon is there and he thinks the Empire is back, and it just kind of reminds us of the time that he was working for Darth Vader. And we have Moff Gideon who destroys the Razor Crest, the Dark Troopers take Grogu, and then at the end, and here's the crucial bit, after Boba Fett, Fennec Shand and Din all talk amongst each other and decide, you know what, because you gave me back my armor, I'm gonna help you get Grogu back. And so in the Slave One, our heroes go back to Navarro, and it turns out that Din is looking for Migs Mayfeld, who he finds out is in prison, a New Republic prison. But did you know, guys, there was more to that scene? Boba Fett and Fennec Shand step out the Slave One, and they have an interaction with Greef Karga. So cutting all the jibber jabber, they say, in a video released by ILM, a meeting between Boba Fett and Greef Karga from The Mandalorian Season 2 was revealed. We do see a brief glimpse of this also in the behind the scenes gallery, and it really is a bounty hunters reunion. There is absolutely no way this was the first time that Boba and Greef Karga cross paths. Greef Karga, as we saw in The Mandalorian Season 1, was part of the Bounty Hunters Guild, so he knew all of the big bounty hunters, Boba Fett, probably Dengar, Bosk, and the interesting thing is he probably also knew the reputation that Boba Fett had. So if the two interacted, and as Bib Fortuna says there were rumours of Boba Fett's death, Greef Karga's reaction and that conversation would have been absolute gold, and it's a shame they didn't include some variation of it in the book of Boba Fett. But then again, that was not the story they were telling. So I suppose one of the big questions we might have is, why was that scene deleted? Well, to be honest, we don't know. It was probably to do with relevance and time consumption. That scene is all about Din Djarin going to Cara Dune and asking her about Migs Mayfeld. That was the point. But this reunion could have been so massive because the episode, directed by Robert Rodriguez, is full of callbacks to the original trilogy, and if Greef Karga and Boba Fett knew each other sometime before Return of the Jedi, maybe there would have been a conversation about the likes of Darth Vader or someone else, because they do have this shared history. And also, given her reputation, I'm sure that Greef Karga knows who Fennec Shand is, so this would have been really awesome. So is it going to be included in The Mandalorian Season 3? Well, there is a good chance of that, because Greef Karga is in the third season. He wears those majestic robes on Navarro in the trailer. I don't know if you remember, but there was some Kowakian monkey lizards as well on Navarro. He's really improved the city, and so has Cara Dune, although I'm not sure how they're going to explain her absence. So I do think if the rumours are true that Boba Fett is in this season, and we already know that Greef Karga is, then maybe the two will interact. That is a conversation I do not want to miss. And then there's the question of, would Dave Filoni want to include that kind of conversation? Is it relevant to the story? Does it advance it? Or is it simply a little nod for the audience? I really don't care either way. I think it'd be really useful to the development and also bringing together of the various elements of the Star Wars universe. I love times we're reminded of the OT or the prequels, or little kind of overlaps and connections. Those things for me just make the whole Star Wars experience more complete, more wholesome. But what do you guys think? Would you have wanted to see this scene in The Mandalorian Season 2? And do you think there's a chance we might see it in the next season? Share your thoughts in the comments down below. And also, guys, given what Jon Favreau said the other day about the scope of Season 3 being so much bigger, a much huger feel to it, Navarro has definitely changed, upgraded, more buildings. If you remember in Season 2, they even had a new school. That was Chapter 12, where Grogu was eating the blue/green macarons. As I say, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and if you want more videos not found here on YouTube, while also getting your name at the end of my videos, then click the link down there in the description. But until the next one, guys, may the Force be with you always.